Have you ever stopped and wondered what would happen if something went wrong tonight? Not next year, not someday in the distant future. Tonight, a fall in the bathroom, a sudden dizzy spell, a chest pain that feels different from all the others. Would anyone know? Would help arrive in time? I want to tell you something that many people don't realize until life forces them to. Living alone after 60 is not dangerous because you're getting older. It's dangerous because most people never prepare for it. My name is Margaret. I'm 83 years old, and for the past 8 years I've lived alone in the same house where my husband and I spent most of our lives together. When Richard passed away, everyone told me how strong I was. Margaret will be fine. She's independent. She can take care of herself. And they were right, at least partly. I could cook my own meals. I could drive. I could pay my bills and keep my home in order. But what nobody talked about was what happens when there is no one there to notice the small things. No one to hear a fall. No one to remind you about medication. No one to say, "You don't look quite right today." One morning, just a few months after becoming widowed, I slipped getting out of the shower. I hit the floor hard. My phone was in the bedroom. I couldn't reach it. For hours, I lay there alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how my story would end. Thankfully, it wasn't. But that day changed everything. Because I realized something important. Independence is not about doing everything by yourself. True independence comes from creating systems that protect you when life doesn't go according to plan. Over the years, I discovered 10 essentials that help me stay safe, confident, and comfortable while living alone. These simple things gave me something priceless: the ability to remain in my own home on my own terms. And today, I want to share every one of them with you. Before we begin, if you're living alone or hope to remain independent for many years to come, leave a comment with the number 1 below and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's talk about the first essential that could literally save your life. The first essential may sound almost too simple to matter, but it could be the difference between a minor accident and a tragedy. When you live alone, the greatest danger is often not the emergency itself. It's the possibility that nobody knows the emergency has happened. After my fall, I kept asking myself one question: what if Sarah hadn't noticed? That thought stayed with me for weeks. I realized I needed a system that would quietly tell someone I was okay every day without making me feel dependent or monitored. So I created what I call a daily safety check-in. Every morning before 9 a.m., I perform one small action. It might be opening the blinds, moving a flower pot on the porch, or sending a simple text message to a friend. The action itself isn't important. What matters is consistency. If that action doesn't happen by a certain time, someone knows to check on me. 5 seconds of effort, potentially life-saving results. Many people believe emergencies are rare, but falls, sudden illnesses, medication reactions, and unexpected health problems happen every day, especially as we get older. The good news is that you don't need expensive technology to protect yourself. A trusted neighbor, a family member, a close friend, even a simple morning text that says, "Good morning, I'm doing fine." That's all it takes. If you live alone, and there is currently no one who would know within a few hours if something happened to you, I encourage you to make this your first priority. Not next week, not when you get around to it, today. Because true independence isn't about having no support. It's about creating support before you need it. For years, I told myself the same thing many older adults tell themselves: I don't want to bother anyone. It sounded responsible. It sounded independent. But eventually I realized it was neither. Living alone doesn't mean facing every challenge by yourself. It means knowing who you can count on when life becomes difficult. Today, I have 3 people listed as emergency contacts: my daughter, my neighbor Sarah, and a close friend from church. Each of them has a phone number for the others. Each knows where I keep a spare key, and each knows they have permission to check on me if something seems wrong. That simple network gives me tremendous peace of mind. The truth is, emergencies rarely arrive with a warning: a sudden illness, a power outage, a fall, a broken water pipe. When something unexpected happens, having even one trusted person to call can make all the difference. Many seniors avoid building this kind of support because they fear becoming a burden. I understand that feeling, but here's what I learned. The people who care about you would rather receive a small call today than a crisis call tomorrow. Connection is not weakness, it is protection. If you live alone, take a few minutes this week to identify 3 people you trust. Make sure they know how to reach you, and make sure you know how to reach them. Because one of the smartest things an independent person can do is make sure they are never truly alone. One of the biggest surprises about living alone after 60 is how much information you're expected to keep track of every single day. Medications, appointments, blood pressure readings, refill dates, doctor recommendations. When my husband was alive, we naturally helped each other remember things. If I forgot whether I had taken my medication, Richard usually knew. If he forgot an appointment, I reminded him. After he was gone, that second set of eyes disappeared, and that's when mistakes started happening. One afternoon, I couldn't remember whether I had taken my blood pressure medication that morning. I stared at the bottle for several minutes, trying to reconstruct my day. Did I take it, or did I only think about taking it? The truth was, I didn't know. That frightened me more than I expected. So, I created a simple health tracking system. Nothing fancy, just a notebook and a weekly pill organizer. Every morning, I write down the date, check off my medications, and make note of anything unusual: dizziness, headaches, poor sleep, or changes in appetite. What started as a safety measure quickly became one of the most valuable tools I own. Patterns become easier to spot. Doctor visits become more productive. And most importantly, I no longer rely entirely on memory. Growing older doesn't mean your memory is failing. It simply means you have more responsibilities than one mind should be expected to manage alone. A notebook may seem ordinary, but sometimes the simplest systems provide the greatest protection. Your brain works hard every day. Give it the backup it deserves. There is a question most people avoid thinking about. What happens if emergency responders arrive and you're unable to speak? It happened to a friend of mine after a severe reaction to a medication. By the time help arrived, she was confused and disoriented. Valuable minutes were spent trying to identify her medications, allergies, and medical history. After hearing that story, I created what I now call my emergency information folder. It's bright red, easy to spot, and stored in the same place at all times. Inside are the details that could matter most during a crisis. A list of my medications, my allergies, my doctor's names and phone numbers, emergency contacts, insurance information, and written instructions about my medical wishes. I update it every few months, especially whenever a medication changes or a new doctor becomes involved in my care. The folder isn't something I think about every day. In fact, I hope nobody ever needs to open it. But knowing it's there gives me peace of mind. Because emergencies are stressful enough without forcing family members, neighbors, or paramedics to search for critical information. When you live alone, preparation becomes a form of protection. You cannot predict every emergency, but you can make it easier for the people trying to help you. If you don't already have a folder like this, consider creating one this week. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist. Because in a moment when every second matters, that simple folder can become your voice when you cannot speak for yourself. I'll be honest with you. For a long time, I resisted the idea of wearing a medical alert device. Every time I saw one advertised on television, I thought the same thing. That's for people who are frail. That's for people who have given up. That's not me. At the time, I believed wearing an emergency alert button would somehow make me feel older. What I didn't realize was that refusing help doesn't make you stronger. It only makes you more vulnerable. That lesson became painfully clear after my second fall. Unlike the first one, I didn't hit my head, but I couldn't get up. My phone was charging in another room, and I spent nearly 3 hours on the floor waiting for someone to notice something was wrong. 3 hours gives a person a lot of time to think. And what I thought about most was how easily that situation could have become much worse. The very next week, I ordered a medical alert watch. Today, I wear it every single day. Not because I expect something bad to happen, but because I understand that emergencies don't ask for permission. One button connects me to help. One button gives my children peace of mind. One button allows me to continue living independently in the home I love. That small device doesn't represent weakness. It represents preparation. In fact, I would argue that truly independent people are the ones who prepare for difficult situations before they happen. If you live alone and don't have a reliable way to call for help when a phone is out of reach, this may be one of the most important investments you ever make. Because sometimes the difference between a frightening story and a tragic one is simply being able to reach help when you need it most. One of the biggest mistakes many of us make as we grow older is continuing to live in a home designed for the person we used to be. At 50, I never thought twice about bending down to reach a heavy pot, climbing a step stool, or carrying a basket of laundry across the house. At 83, those same tasks require much more caution. The truth is, our homes don't automatically adapt as we age. We have to adapt them ourselves. After my second fall, I walked through every room with a simple question in mind. What in this house could hurt me? The answers were surprising. Loose rugs, poor lighting in the hallway, frequently used items stored on high shelves, heavy cookware hidden in low cabinets. Small obstacles I had stepped around for years suddenly looked very different. Over time, I made small changes. I installed brighter lights, added non-slip mats, moved everyday items to waist level, placed a sturdy chair in the kitchen so I could sit while preparing meals. None of these changes were expensive, but together they made my home safer, more comfortable, and far easier to manage. Many people view home modifications as a sign of decline. I see them differently. They are a sign of wisdom. Your goal isn't to prove you can still live exactly as you did 20 years ago. Your goal is to continue living independently for as many years as possible. A safe home protects your freedom. And when your home works with your body instead of against it, everyday life becomes less exhausting and far more enjoyable. When people talk about the challenges of living alone after 60, they usually focus on physical safety, falls, medications, medical emergencies. Those things matter. But there is another challenge that receives far less attention: waking up each morning without a clear sense of structure. After my husband died, the mornings were the hardest. For nearly 5 decades, my day began with another person. There was someone to talk to over breakfast, someone moving around the house, someone whose presence gave shape to the day. Then suddenly, there was silence. At first, I would wake up and simply drift through the morning. Some days I stayed in my robe until noon. Some days I turned on the television just to hear another voice in the room. The more unstructured my mornings became, the more lost I felt. That's when I created a simple ritual. Every morning at 7, I make a cup of coffee, sit in the same chair by the window, and spend 10 quiet minutes reflecting before the day begins. No television, no phone, no distractions. Just a moment to breathe, think, and remind myself that this day matters. It may sound small, but that routine became an anchor. On difficult days, it gives me stability. On lonely days, it gives me comfort. On good days, it gives me gratitude. A daily ritual doesn't need to be complicated. It could be a short walk, prayer, journaling, stretching, or simply enjoying a cup of tea in peace. What matters is consistency. Because when you live alone, routines create a sense of purpose. And purpose is often what transforms a house from a place where you merely exist into a place where you truly live. There is a kind of stress that quietly follows many people who live alone. It isn't always about health. It isn't always about loneliness. Sometimes it's the fear of an unexpected expense, a broken water heater, a major car repair, a medical bill that arrives without warning, a roof leak during a storm. When I first began living alone, every unexpected expense felt like a threat. I worried constantly about what might happen next and whether I would be able to handle it. The strange thing was that most of those emergencies never happened. Yet the worry was stealing my peace anyway. Eventually, I decided to create a small emergency fund that was completely separate from my regular savings. Nothing extravagant, just money set aside for life's surprises. Month by month, it grew. And something remarkable happened. The amount of money mattered less than the feeling it created. Confidence. Instead of fearing every strange noise in the house, I knew I had options. Instead of panicking over an unexpected bill, I knew I had a cushion. Financial security isn't about being wealthy. It's about reducing unnecessary fear. Even a modest emergency fund can help you make decisions calmly instead of desperately. And that matters more than many people realize. Because living alone successfully isn't only about protecting your body, it's also about protecting your peace of mind. The less time you spend worrying about what if, the more time you can spend enjoying the life you've worked so hard to build. A little preparation today can buy a tremendous amount of peace tomorrow. There is a difference between staying busy and having a reason to wake up in the morning. For a while after Richard passed away, my days were full of activity. I paid bills, cleaned the house, went grocery shopping, attended appointments. On the surface, I looked productive, but deep inside, something was missing. I was managing my life, not truly living it. One afternoon, I caught myself looking at the clock and realizing I was simply trying to make the day end. That frightened me more than any financial problem or home repair ever could. Because when life becomes nothing more than a list of tasks, joy slowly disappears. That's when I decided I needed something that belonged entirely to me. Not a responsibility, not an obligation, a purpose. For me, it began with writing. I started keeping a journal and writing letters to Richard that I would never send. Some days I wrote about memories. Other days I wrote about fears, hopes, and the strange experience of growing older alone. Those letters helped me reconnect with myself. Your purpose may look completely different. Perhaps it's gardening. Perhaps it's volunteering. Perhaps it's painting, woodworking, caring for a pet, researching family history, or helping younger generations learn from your experiences. The activity itself is not what matters most. What matters is feeling that your life still contributes something meaningful to the world, because purpose gives structure to our days and strength to our hearts. When challenges come, and they always do, purpose reminds us why we keep moving forward. Living alone after 60 should not be about simply surviving another year. It should be about continuing to grow, contribute, and find meaning in the years you have been given. And sometimes, that meaning becomes the most powerful source of strength you possess. Of all the lessons I've learned while living alone, this may be the most important and the most difficult. Learning to ask for help before you desperately need it. For most of my life, I took pride in handling things myself. If something broke, I figured it out. If there was a problem, I solved it. If I needed assistance, I tried to manage without it for as long as possible. That mindset served me well when I was younger. But as I grew older, I discovered that waiting until a problem becomes a crisis often creates far bigger problems. One winter, my water heater began making strange noises. I noticed it immediately. But instead of calling someone, I ignored it. Then I convinced myself it wasn't serious. Then I told myself I'd deal with it next week. A few weeks later, it failed completely. Suddenly, I had no hot water, an emergency repair bill, and several stressful days that could have been avoided with one simple phone call. The same thing can happen with our health. A small pain becomes a larger problem. A little dizziness becomes a dangerous fall. A minor concern becomes an emergency room visit. When we delay asking for help, we often lose choices. And when choices disappear, independence becomes harder to maintain. Today, I do things differently. If a light bulb is in a difficult spot, I ask for help instead of climbing. If I feel something unusual in my body, I call my doctor instead of hoping it goes away. If a task feels unsafe, I don't try to prove anything. I simply reach out. And here's what I've learned. Asking for help early does not take away your independence. It protects it. True independence is not doing everything alone. It's having the wisdom to recognize when support can prevent a small problem from becoming a life-changing one. That wisdom may be one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves as we grow older. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's conversation, it's this. Living alone after 60 is not about being fearless. It's about being prepared. Over the years, I've learned that independence isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you protect through small decisions made day after day. A simple daily check-in, a trusted network of people, a medication tracker, an emergency folder, a medical alert device, a safer home, a meaningful morning ritual, a financial cushion, a sense of purpose, and the courage to ask for help before a crisis arrives. None of these things are complicated. None of them require extraordinary strength. But together, they create something incredibly powerful, a life that is both independent and secure. At 83 years old, I still wake up in my own bed every morning. I still make my coffee, enjoy my quiet moments, and move through my day on my own terms. Not because nothing bad has ever happened to me, quite the opposite. It's because I learned from those difficult moments and built systems that protect me when life becomes unpredictable. And that's what I want for you. Whether you're 62, 72, or 82, it's never too early or too late to make your life a little safer, a little easier, and a little more peaceful. You don't have to change everything today. Choose just one thing from this list, one small improvement, one good decision, then build from there. Because the goal isn't simply to live longer. The goal is to live with dignity, confidence, and freedom for as long as possible. If you found value in today's video, leave a comment with the number 1 below. I'd love to know you're taking steps toward a safer, more independent future. And don't forget to subscribe for more practical wisdom on aging well, staying healthy, and making the most of every year ahead. Until next time, take care of yourself. You are worth taking care of.